Good morning, students. Hope you all are safe and healthy. Today, we are going to learn history. But before we begin with our lesson, let me ask you what comes to your mind when you think about history? Well, I suppose you must be thinking about events that took place in the past. Exactly, that is absolutely right. In Standard 4th, you learnt about the life of Shivaji Maharaj. Shivaji Maharaj was born about 400 years ago. It is an event of the past. In order to learn about past events, history makes use of certain signs. In this lesson, we will learn why history is a science that tells us about past event, how time is divided for our convenience, and what are the different sources of history. Last year in Standard 4th, we learnt about life of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and his mission of establishing Swaraj. Shivaji Maharaj was born on 16th February 1630, that is about 400 years before now, or in other words, 400 years ago. So we can say that history tells us about people who lived in the past, their lifestyle, their way of living. It also tells us about the great warriors and the various battles won by our brave heroes. We divide time in various ways. We use words such as today, tomorrow, yesterday, some time ago in order to divide time. It helps us to better understand about the events taking place in our surrounding. It also helps us to understand when had a particular event occurred. When I say India won independence many years ago, I am talking about past event. Next year I am going to London. I am indicating about future. When I say the world is suffering now, I am talking about present. Words like today, this year indicate present. After some time, tomorrow, next year indicate future. Sometime, last year, yesterday indicates past. The time that had already gone is the past. It remember children, it will never come back. The time that we are in now is the present. So we must make the best use of the time we are having. We should engage in activities that will help us in our overall development. The time that is yet to come is the future. How old are you all now? You must be either 10 or 11 years old. All children studying in Standard 5th must be around 10 years old. It means you were born 10 years from now, that is, in the year 2010. Presently, you are a 10-year-old smart, school going boy or a girl. After 10 years, you will be 20 years old, studying in college. The time that is gone by between today and the day of your birth is the past. During this period, many changes have occurred in your life. You started to talk, you started to walk, you started going to school, you learned to read and write. So all these events together comprises of the past. So the science that tries to understand past events is called history. Now we will see what scientific method does history use in studying past events. Many things had happened to us since our birth, but we hardly remember anything. Our grandparents, parents, neighbors, relatives often tell us stories of our childhood, and we wonder, is it true or are they making up stories? In standard 3rd and 4th, as part of environmental science, we learnt about various science. We learnt how water cycle takes place, how clouds are formed, how plants grow from seed, why oxygen is necessary for burning. All these activities can be proved right with the help of experiments. Experiments are conducted in laboratories to test facts or evidences. These experiments can be done over and over again. The method of using a number of different tests to determine whether the evidence is reliable or not is called as scientific method. Dear children, I am giving you one task. I want you to ask your parents anything about your childhood, and I am sure they will be able to tell everything without any doubt. Our parents and grandparents remember everything about us. They know when did we take our first step, when did we start to talk, how we cried, what was our first word, what our likes and dislikes were. They know everything about us. Even our neighbors are able to tell stories about our childhood. If you doubt, please ask them. But you may find some difference in the story narrated by different people. The stories narrated by different people are different from each other. Some add little mirchi masala to your story, whereas some tell the real incidents. Nowadays, we can see in news channel the facts are not presented properly. For a same event, the media house portrays a different story, which leads to wrong information. So, it is very important to minutely examine and understand the details of each story and decide the correctness of facts, or else we will fall prey to wrong information. The events that had already taken place in the past cannot be recreated. So it is very important to examine every evidence very minutely. Care should be taken while collecting evidences from ancient and medieval places, buildings, palaces, or temples. History uses the scientific method at every stage. When an archaeologist finds a coin during its excavation, they send it to research center for examination. In this research center, the coin has been studied in detail. They study everything about the coin. When was it minted? How old the coin is, what metal was used to mint the coin, what was the purpose of the coin, what things have been engraved or drawn on the coin. All such information is been collected with the help of different sciences. Thus, it is said that history uses scientific discipline. History is not written with the help of imagination, it is written with the help of various scientific techniques. Sources of history means things that have been extracted from ancient places by digging up the ground and using those things for the study of history. Different sources of history include ancient objects, structures, sculptures, pots, coins, inscription, books, manuscripts, traditional songs and stories that have been remembered over generations and generations. Sources of history are of three types: material source, written source, and oral source. Material sources of history include things such as coins, forts, pots, old structures, rock cut caves, pillars, etc. All things are included in material sources of history. Written sources of history are those sources which are in the written form. For example, letters, biographies, stories, holy books, scriptures, etc. are all written in the form of written source of history. Oral sources of history are those things which are in the oral form, which can be told verbally and can be passed on from one generation to another, such as traditional songs, folk tales, folk stories, povada.